had a pretty shit time dating in the past, like many people. However, after much convincing from my sister, I decided to give online dating another try. It didn't take long before meeting a boy named Chase. Chase was about 5 years older than me and not the typical boy I would normally go for. However, none of the other boys I'd gone for had turned out pretty well. After texting for a week or two, Chase was very adamant about meeting up. Since the first day that we started texting, he would constantly bring up seeing each other. However, these were all late at night. Finally, I agreed to meet up with him on the grounds that we went to a dinner at a restaurant that I was familiar with. It was a Friday night, and as I waited at the restaurant, I couldn't help but feel my stomach twist with nerves. I hated being the first to arrive. Nevertheless, Chase showed up, but boy, had I known, I wish he hadn't. He definitely looks different, older, more scruffy. "Alice?" he asked, coming closer to me. His clothes reeked a little of petrol. I did my best to smile, but I knew straight away that he was definitely different than his profile. Throughout the whole dinner, I felt uneasy. Some of his answers to my questions weren't matching what he originally told me. He'd said that he was in recruitment, but then apologised for the smell, stating he had been in the shop fitting cars for the whole day. I mean, I suppose it could have been a hobby. I was just assuming the worst, but could you blame me? But there was something he said at the end of our date that to this day truly sends shivers down my spine. As we had walked out of the restaurant, he turned to me, smiled and said, "This was a nice place. No wonder I see you eating here all the time." I took a moment to respond, "What?" He then tried backtracking fast, stating, I assume you come here because the food is so good." I quickly changed the subject, telling him I needed an early night. As I said goodbye and started walking to my car, Chase followed. I stopped and asked what he was doing. "A gentleman always walks a lady to her car," he explained. At this point, I'm desperate to do anything to end this night quicker, so I don't object. Once we reach my car, I thank him for his time and quickly go on my way, avoiding any moment longer with this man. I arrived home pretty quickly, relieved to be in the safety of my own home, locking the door, thinking about how I definitely was not going to be dating for a while after this. Suddenly, my phone pings. I chuck the keys on the kitchen table before pulling it out. My stomach drops, reading the notification. AirTag found moving with you. My whole body goes numb as my phone pings again. This time, a message. "I'm glad you got home safe." I recently broke up with my girlfriend of 2 years. While we were good together, there were some differences that I couldn't get past. It was tough to let go, so I decided to briefly move back in with my parents to take a break from my apartment, as she'd been living with me for a while and everything seemed to remind me of her. My parents lived in a classic suburban neighbourhood, quiet streets, everyone knowing everyone, the 9 yards. It was good to just be around family and definitely took my mind off recent events. However, one weekend they decided to go away to a beachside resort to celebrate their anniversary. Now this was probably the first time that I'd been left alone with my thoughts. I was bored, lonely, and well, one thing led to another and I downloaded some dating apps. I pretty much swiped right on everyone. In my mind, I had the whole weekend and a rebound could definitely take my mind off things. And it was pretty soon after that I matched with a girl named Eve. Eve had long dark hair and was definitely my type. Now I know I probably shouldn't have done this, but soon after texting, I invited her over to mine. She mentioned living in an area that I recognised wasn't too far from here, and naturally I was tempted. She agreed, so I gave her my address and told her to message me when she was on her way. 45 minutes had passed since she last saw my message. I thought that was strange considering she only lived like 15 minutes away. I messaged her, "Hey, everything okay? Are you still coming over?" To be fair, I assumed she got spooked and changed her mind, thinking it'd probably be a bit too risky coming over at night to a boy's house that she'd never met. Still, no reply. Assuming that she had decided otherwise, I went on with my night binging Netflix. Almost 2 hours had gone past when my phone pinged. "Hey, I'm outside. Open the door." Huh? That was strange. I looked at my phone. Normally the doorbell ring camera would send a notification with any movement at the door. I was logged onto my family's account for the weekend as they had insisted that everyone in the family had access to it. I go downstairs and look out the side window next to the door. No one. I quickly unlock the door, stepping outside onto the empty porch. I can't see you. I think you have the wrong house, I texted, looking around. Almost immediately, I got a message back. No, I can see you. You've got a grey t-shirt on. Confused, I looked around some more. It was dark, but it wasn't that dark. There's no way that if she was standing in the front of the house, I would not be able to see her. The atmosphere in the air started to feel a bit eerie. Suddenly, I didn't like this idea. I turned to go back inside, making sure to lock it before my phone pings again. Wait, don't go. Don't you want to see me? This can't be right. Panicked, I go back to the door, make sure it's locked before checking all the windows. My phone pings again. Don't do that. I sucked in air, feeling goosebumps and tingles erupt all over my skin. This has to be a joke, right? I tried backtracking to her frantically and messaged, I don't think this is a good idea anymore. I'm not feeling well. Maybe another time? I turned all the lights off downstairs before running back upstairs. My mum was racing through all the entry points of the house, trying to remember if I'd forgotten one. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I sat in the darkness of the room, the silence almost suffocating. Before hearing leaves crackling outside, I bolted to the window, catching a glimpse of a dark silhouette darting to the back of the house. My stomach dropped. That was definitely not the silhouette of a girl. As I opened my phone and go back onto the app, it's clear that I've been blocked from this Eve account. Suddenly my phone notifies me of an alert. It's a video notification from the doorbell camera downstairs. That's when I saw him. It was only a glimpse. But as he had gone around the back of the house, he passed the front door and briefly looked towards the door, smiling. I'll never forget that face. I questioned calling the police. I questioned calling my family, but I don't want to ruin their anniversary all over some dumb move trying to have a rebound. I decided to wait it out. I was confident that every entry point was locked and secured. Pretending that I wasn't home wasn't going to be an option anymore because it was clear that they knew that I was here alone. However, I was hoping that eventually they would give up after realizing that they couldn't get in. I was right. I'd locked my bedroom door and barricaded myself in for the night. I barely slept. I spent the entire night listening to the smallest of sounds. Thankfully, the rest of the night was quiet. I didn't receive any more messages from that person. However, in saying that, I was blocked, so it's not like I could go back and find that profile. The next morning, nothing looked like it had been moved or stolen. The doors had stayed locked and there was nothing that indicated that this person had gotten into the house. The rest of the weekend I kept to myself, deleting the day naps pretty quickly and made sure to keep the doors locked at night. And honestly, after that weekend, I kind of decided to go back home. I didn't tell my parents. I know I should have. But I didn't want to freak them out. Plus, I knew they would have been upset with me inviting someone over. So I figured there was no hard done, as no one had attempted to show up the other nights, and I hadn't heard from this person again. That was until a few weeks later. My mum ended up calling me to catch up. At one point, she started going on about one of my friends looking for me a couple days ago, said that he had showed up to the house in the middle of the day, mentioning my name, asking if I was home. She started going on about how she didn't know that I had made any friends while being down there, how she thought that it was quite odd because he was quite a bit older than me. And as soon as she mentioned that he was older, it clicked. This could be the same person. Remembering that I was still logged onto the app from the doorbell camera, I quickly scrolled to the day she mentioned and went through the footage starting from morning till afternoon. It didn't take me long. There he was. The same man. He came back. I felt sick to my stomach. Once I realised I had to tell my mum, I told her everything. She was mortified, convinced me that I needed to go back and make a police report, which I did end up doing. He never showed back up though. My dad got all new cameras around the house, and for the next couple of months they were hyper vigilant during the night, but nothing. To this day, it's an eerie feeling knowing that somewhere this man knows exactly where I live and has been there multiple times trying to find me. I don't know what he wants, but every time I come home for the holidays, I'm always on high alert, knowing that one day I will eventually run into him again. This happened in 2022, when I was a bit more naive. Since the pandemic, my dating life had definitely taken a hit. I'd broken up with my long-term boyfriend midway through 2020 and hadn't really dated anyone since. Once everything started calming down, I decided to try online dating again. I joined all your stock standard dating apps, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. I even did a bit of Facebook dating, which was definitely interesting. I met a boy named Josh. I'd already gone on quite a few dates with people, but no one had really stood out to me, or at least I hadn't stood out to them. Josh and I organised a coffee date pretty quickly. Nothing really stood out with Josh. He was just your average uni student, studying health science while working part-time to pay for his own place. I didn't mind, however. I was making it a goal to pretty much keep an open mind with all my dates, because I guess you never know where things end up, right? The coffee date went well. I was surprised that we actually had a lot more in common than I realised. Our humour also seemed to bounce off each other pretty well too. To be honest, I actually felt pretty optimistic after our first date, as I hadn't felt this good with someone in a very long time. Now, this could be where I went wrong. For the second date, well, it wasn't really a second date, it was more of a booty call. It was a Saturday night, and after not hearing from Josh all day, he finally texted me. He started going on about how much he wanted to see me again, asking me to come over, saying that he would cook for me, saying that I could stay the night. Honestly, it was pretty tempting, and unfortunately, I caved. I mean, it didn't seem like that bad of an idea, like I had already met the man, and he was definitely who he said he was. I agreed, and he sent me the address, which was definitely quite far from where I thought he lived. My maps were bringing up that he was over 45 minutes to an hour away, so I definitely better be staying the night because there was no way that I was going to do that drive twice within one night. I quickly packed some stuff and sent a message letting him know that I was on my way. The roads were pretty quiet at that time of night, so by the time I arrived it was only 10 to 10. All the houses were quite spread out, with either farmland or trees occupying the spaces in between. It was also very dark. Darker than what I was used to, as the hustle of the city lights weren't illuminating the streets. I'd never really been out this way before, but I assumed that it was most likely cheaper to rent on your own as a part-time uni student compared to the city. I pulled into a narrow dirt road strip on my right, trees engulfing each side. I could hardly see more than 30 metres in front of me. It was so dark. I finally came to a clearway which shows a small one-storey brick home with a porch which wrapped around the front. This was definitely not something I expected. I mean, I knew that the place was going to be quite far away, but I didn't know how isolating it would be. I stepped out of the car, nerves setting in. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. I looked down at my phone, and while there wasn't a strong signal, at least there was something. I quickly texted Josh to let him know that I had arrived. Nothing. He hadn't even opened my message. It had been a good 10 minutes already, and I didn't really want to be standing out in the dark, practically in the bush at this point. Annoyed, I go up to the front of the house and look into the windows. It didn't even look like anyone was home. I started questioning whether I'd even gotten the right house at this point. I decided to call him instead. I waited as it rang, until I heard an almost distant muffled ringing coming from inside the house. No answer. Suddenly, I get a call from an unknown caller. Answering, I hear Josh's voice at the other end. "Hey, I'm sorry. I had to duck out quickly to get some snacks. I'm like 5 minutes away. Just let yourself in. It's unlocked," he said frantically. Wait a minute, what? He wasn't even there? But I could swear that I heard a phone ringing. Did he have two phones? Why would he have two phones? "You're not here?" I questioned, confused. Everything in me was telling me to turn around and get in my car. This didn't seem right at all. But I had driven all this way and he was only 5 minutes away. Surely I should just wait out a little bit longer, right? No, I'm almost there, sorry. I've left the door unlocked for you because I thought that this may happen, he explained. Agreeing, we end the call and I stepped inside. It was dark and I couldn't find a light switch. And then when I did, it was so dim that it wasn't even worth it. Instead, I used my phone's flashlight. Honestly, the whole situation was dodgy. But I was just trying to tell myself, maybe he was a broke uni student, so maybe he couldn't afford any better. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. I just couldn't go any further. Something didn't feel right. As I stood there in dead silence, my heart beating hard, a slight creak in the floorboards erupted. I snapped my neck till I left. My mind races. I didn't make that up. Someone was definitely in this house. My stomach twists. I back up slowly, trying not to make a sound. Another creak. Except it's not from me. They're coming closer. Immediately my mind goes blank except for 2 words. Get out. I turn and bolted towards the front door. And just as I did, I hear more heavy steps behind me. Running to the porch, I see a car pulled up, high beams blinding. I see glimpses of Josh's face, screaming at me, asking me where I'm going. I ignore him. All I need to do is get out and far away from this place. Something's wrong. Quickly jumping in the car, I finally face the direction towards the front door. A man. He stands in the doorway with his head cracked in my direction. Staring. Takes me a minute to realise what was happening before I pulled out, swing around and speed through the narrow dirt roadway. I felt my hands tremble as I gripped to the steering wheel. My phone kept blowing up with text messages, which I could only presume are from Josh. Who was that man? Josh said he lived alone. Why was he there? Why didn't Josh tell me someone was there? Why were there no lights on and this man was just waiting in the dark? Questioned everything, trying to think of excuses or coincidence or just anything under the sun. But deep down I knew. I knew that the reason had a more sinister ending. And that I was lucky to even be in my car right now, going home. Because I'm assuming that that wasn't a part of Josh's plan.